Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And I want to go over something today that I think is a subject that's not really brought up that much when it comes to what we think about when we're watching a movie, and that's the editing. And the reason why I bring this up is because I actually just recently came across it. Well, recently this afternoon, I came across an article that basically talks about this movie called Crazy Samurai 400 versus 1. And so naturally I clicked on it because it's about samurai, and I'm assuming it has something with one samurai killing 400 samurai. So I'm like, okay, that's probably a gross exaggeration, like a trauma film or something. But you actually watch the trailer, and basically the idea is okay, so they literally are supposed to have 400 people. And keep in mind, too, I'm going to link the trailer below. This isn't actually a trailer breakdown, but I'm going to link the trailer below so you guys can watch it so you understand kind of what I'm talking about in this. And like I said, if you watch the whole thing through, the main set piece of this entire thing is a 77-minute continuous action scene with no edits and no cuts. This is the epitome of what I would say either is extremely ambitious filmmaking or extremely lazy filmmaking. I'm going to go with ambitious because it looks like these people actually kind of semi knew what they were doing. Now this is a lower budgeted thing. It's actually going on a streaming service I've never heard of that's called Hi-Ya, which I think is supposed to be, I think it's a Japanese streaming service. And basically, it's a samurai movie, and keep in mind, this is a 92-minute film, and 77 of those minutes are brought up by this action scene. So all but 15 minutes of this film is dedicated to this action scene. And that's kind of where my hang-up is on this, and this is why I find this a kind of a good example. And don't get me wrong, I'm not shitting on the idea of a continuous action scene, because it's been done before in other films to good success. You look at the continuous action scene from Oldboy, the original one, not the American remake, before somebody corrects me on that. Great action scene. The Raid movies, if anybody's ever seen those, like The Raid 2, The Raid Redemption, any of those films, they do have several scenes in there which I'm fairly certain are continuous action scenes, and a lot of them, even if they aren't, have very little editing in some of them. That's a really good one to look at too. So it's been done successfully. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying it shouldn't be done in 70-minute chunks. I'm saying it shouldn't be gratuitous to that extent. Now, when you actually watch the trailer, a majority of it is him having the little sword fight stuff. But here's the other problem that I kind of have with this type of an idea is because you only have the one continuous shot, that means you're working from one single camera that entire time. So you're not going to be able to show various views because there's no edit. There's no edit. You're just literally watching this from the cameraman's perspective. You don't switch to a different angle so you can see something better, or you don't move around to another side of him so you can see that there's a guy coming up from behind. You don't have those. So you run into that problem of people not necessarily knowing what's going on in the environment. I think that's probably the big issue with it, is people not necessarily knowing what's going on in the scene because you always have to have that main character framed in the scene. Now, they do have several shots in the trailer where they do show, the bird's eye views or the aerial views, the views from like above, which I'm not sure how they're getting that again if it's a continuous shot unless they're on some kind of a rig. But you have the overshots of him with the sword. Then you have shots of him where he's literally surrounded by people. Now here's my other, and again this factors into my other issue with this, is the idea of in editing can disguise certain things. Without the editing, you kind of have issues. Now, looking at the actual fight scene itself, and seeing, what the main character is doing, and, all the sword fighting and stuff like that, and how he's surrounded by a good amount of people. In reality, if they all lunged forward at the exact same time, instead of going at him one at a time, which is really what we see mostly in the trailer, if they all go at the same time, he's dead. 4 of them will stab him in the back, even if he manages to get out of it. Unless, that's the final showdown and like those are the last of them left. But I figure it would make more sense, if he's running through, I'm assuming that's probably what's going to happen but they're just not showing it, is he's going to run through all these things. He's going to lose half of them at one point and then take out like a few guys and he takes out a few more guys. They should do it kind of like what they did with Dredd. The Carl Urban Dredd film, where the guys kind of come in waves. The enemy doesn't know where he is 100% of the time, so a few of them find him and then he kills them. But the enemies notify more of them and they show up, so he has to flee. He hides again. He kills a few more people. Stuff like that. Again, like what they did with Dredd, that would make sense. But the thing is that when you do that with the continuous shot, you run into the issue of, okay, now you have to go through all these structures. You're going to have to make it seem like he's losing these people. And you're going to have to sell that on screen, whereas it could be done very, very easily with edits. So that's the other thing that I kind of have a strange thing with this is like it feels almost like they did this simply just so they could say that they did it, as opposed to something that was better for the film. Because that's the other thing too, is this is a 77-minute continuous shot. So that means this was all done in one take, which means that a majority of this movie was filmed in a single day. And the remaining 15 minutes were filmed over a period of however long this production was. But if you're doing that, 15 minutes of film, was this production like 10 days? Maybe not even? That's a questionable thing too, because I said at the beginning, it's either a very, very ambitious choice or a very, very lazy choice. And that's what I mean by a lazy choice, is the idea of, we don't, we didn't hire an editor, so we're going to have to do it all in like one take. Something like, it sounds a bit something like that. Or the idea of, we only have X amount of time to actually film this movie. Okay, let's just make this massive action scene. All you guys fuck around for an hour. That's kind of what it seems like. Although I will say this, when they actually do show the choreography in the scene, it does look legitimately like he's doing a relatively good job. These people did have some, at least the main character anyway, did have some form of training. The actor had some form of training, or at least it appears that way, because the swordsmanship does not look terrible. Well, I shouldn't say look terrible. I mean, in terms of film, in terms of, movie swordsmanship, it looked fairly good. So I think that he knows his way around a blade at least. But it brings up a whole other point where this has been done and failed so many times. You look at stuff like Avatar: The Last Airbender is or Avatar: The Last Airbender, the movie, the live-action movie that was done by M. Night Shyamalan. There's a very large action sequence in the second act of that film, I believe. And that action sequence itself is if you actually watch it and again, half of it's in slow motion anyway, but if you watch it slowed down, you can see where all the things are fucked up, because that's the other problem with doing an action scene that is that long, is everybody has to hit their takes. You can't have a situation where he slices somebody and the guy doesn't realize that he's been sliced and that he's dead and he's still standing there with the sword. You can't have that situation. So all of these stunt people, and obviously the main character too, have to be on their they have to be on their game, especially that main guy too, because that main guy is going to have to do this for over an hour. He's going to have to be running around slashing people and pretending to fight with a sword convincingly for 77 minutes. And that's the other problem too. Like that dude must have been exhausted after that. It must have been insane. Like I said, The Last Airbender, that action scene is god-awful. You can go back to the throne room scene in Last Jedi, where there's a ton of little errors and stuff. There's like disappearing weapons in that and stuff because of the way it was shot. And again, that actually did have edits, but there are certain scenes in that where it doesn't, where like the timing and everything is off. Even for some of these extended scenes. Now, again, some of it is actually one long extended action scene. But like I said, this is done without edits. At least to my knowledge, it seems like it is done. It states that it is done in one continuous shot. And again, I think this is kind of a gimmicky thing now, because we saw this with 1918, which came out. Was it 1918 or 1914? I can't remember. I think it was 1918. Or 1917, that's what it was, 1917, I'm a dipshit. When that came out and they kind of advertised that, and that movie was good, I think it kind of gave some people the green light. But the thing is that I think that that's kind of a microcosm. That's something that worked really well, and that director had an artistic vision. That I know we reuse that term so much, and it shouldn't be used so much. But that director had an artistic vision, and he did that vision how he wanted to do it, and it worked out well. That movie got nominated for several Oscars. So I understand from that point of view, but I don't think it should be a regular thing, especially with action scenes specifically. Because this isn't like a movie that was filmed like this, where there's a story and there's lines and there's stuff delivered and there's movement and stuff. This is like just literally an action scene. There's literally just a dude murdering people with a katana for an hour and 17 minutes. And that's the other thing too, is an hour and 17-minute fight scene is gonna get fucking boring after a while. And I know that sounds insane, considering the idea of a dude killing people with a samurai sword. There's constant action on screen. There's dudes. There's limbs and shit flying everywhere. But I can tell you that it will probably get boring after like 10 minutes. It'll be like, okay, when are they gonna actually kill this guy, or am I just gonna watch him mutilate these people? Because you lose kind of the sense of urgency that you would in like a normal fight scene in a film, where a normal fight scene would probably last anywhere from, other than like big set pieces and stuff like that, like the end of the first Avengers movie or something. Most fight scenes at the end of films are usually somewhere between around the 10-minute mark. I think like I said, Avengers are kind of the exception, where I think the fight scene at the end of the first one was like at least 20 minutes. But again, that fight scene was varied. They shifted around to a lot of different areas. There was a lot of editing. Keep that in mind. So there was a lot going on, and you could follow different characters and see different things. Unlike this, again, where you're following one singular character with one singular fucking camera. But that's what I mean about editing being important in film these days, is the idea of, you can't get away with what 1917 did. You can't get away with what that film did. For every movie, and especially not for a movie like an action movie involving samurai swords. This basically feels kind of like, actually what movie did this perfectly was Kill Bill. Kill Bill Volume 1, when Uma Thurman fights the Crazy 88 at the end of that film. That is a million times better version of what I just saw in this trailer, because that was done well. It's a long fight scene. Don't get me wrong. It is a very long fight scene, but the fight scene works because it has fucking editing. Uma Thurman, you don't see when she's fighting all these guys, they have all these different angles and stuff like that, and all the different things that she does, and it's very quick, and it's very kind of lightning fast, and it's believable that she's doing the things that she's doing to these people to an extent, because Quentin Tarantino was a very good director, and he has very good fight choreographers. Again, I think that's the problem with this movie, is not necessarily that it has a 77. Well, I think there probably is a problem with this movie, that it has a 77-minute long single take. But I think more the problem is that this movie it's suffering from lack of a budget. I will say that, because you can tell the samurai swords aren't real. You can tell that the blood obviously is not real, even though I think they're doing a semi good job. They have like that fake blood again, because they don't have time to set up special effects because there's no editing. It's again, I feel like the problem with this movie is they needed to hire a fucking editor, not necessarily that they have such a massive scene in there. But it's just something that I try to shed light on these things, especially when I have conversations with other people on streams and stuff like that, when we're talking about actual film production, is that there's a lot of things that are important to a film outside of the acting and the directing. The music, the choreography and stuff, the fight choreography, and then also just general choreography on film. All the lighting. I know Webb loves to go on and on about lighting. But it is something that's fucking important. The writing process well before, even though that is kind of one of the highlight things for it, especially people that do scripts. Even though professional screenwriters no, but directors that do their own writing, they get put up on a fucking pedestal for it. That kind of stuff. The things that don't necessarily get a lot of light shed on them. Normally. And editing is one of those things. You don't necessarily think of when you're looking at a movie. You obviously you see him in the credits, you see somebody's name listed, but you never really kind of take the edit. Here's the thing: if you have good editing in a movie, nobody talks about it. They only talk about it if the editing is shit. Because then it's obvious that somebody who was doing it was terribly bad at it. It's but if you have a really good editor, then nobody talks about it because the movie looks amazing. So it really, for an editor, kind of, I guess saying nothing is the biggest compliment, at least that they usually get. But again, I like to shed light on those type of things, and I just happened to come across this thing with this samurai movie that I thought kind of really highlighted a lot of the problems that exist in going with that format, especially with action scenes and stuff like that, and some examples of other things, again, like stuff from The Last Airbender and Old Boy and stuff like that. So. But that's just kind of my opinion on editing and my kind of breakdown of this whole thing. But I want to know what you think. What's your kind of favorite part of film production in terms of things that are not recognized? Would it be editing, lighting, writing, whatever you want to throw in there? Put it in the comments below. As usual, I'd like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?